Welcome to the Attractions Group podcast. This is an exclusive just for our YouTube subscribers, and we're going to be talking with Ryan Sir today. Ryan recently was in East Tennessee visiting the Gatlinburg and Pigeon Forge area. And Ryan, when you were there, just looking at your social media posts, you seemed to found quite a bit to do down there.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those of you who's just stumbled upon us, we're the Attractions Group podcast. You can find us on your favorite podcast apps as well as right here on YouTube by searching for the Attractions Group podcast. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, went down to East Tennessee, visited Dollywood, stayed at the DreamMore Resort. Lots of fun things.
So before we get into it, I got to ask, did you make a stop at Buc-ee's
I did.
on the way down?
I did. I made a stop at Buc-ee's. I got gas. I know that was going to be your next question. And then
Yeah.
I got the melt, which is collectively pretty much our favorite at this point. And for memorabilia's sake, I picked up a Buc-ee's magnet. I realized I hadn't have one, so it's kind of cute. Buc-ee the Beaver. That's going to be on my refrigerator from here on out.
Keep Buc-ee the Beaver. That's right. So while you were down there in Tennessee, you stayed at the DreamMore. What was that like?
The DreamMore was a beautiful, beautiful hotel and resort. We stayed there for one night because we ended up adding a night to our trip, and it just kind of made sense. But we still took the time to actually enjoy it. Architecturally speaking, both on the inside and out, it looks like a mini Breakers hotel, like at Cedar Point. But instead of having pictures of roller coasters, they had pictures of Dolly. But they have like a full service restaurant, a spa. We didn't participate in it, but we did check out. They have like a camp thing every night. It's similar to Great Wolf Lodge actually, but they actually roast marshmallows and stuff every night when the weather's warm. So that was really cool. The DreamMore Resort was definitely nice, and we're gonna be back. Let's put it that way.
All right. So what were some of the things about the DreamMore that you found unique?
So I would say that probably the biggest thing about the DreamMore that was unique was they had Dolly's Dream Box there. And I had heard about this and I had forgotten about it. So when I actually came across it, it was interesting. Dolly's Dream Box includes a CD, allegedly includes a CD with Dolly's last song to be released on her 100th birthday in 2045, January of 2045. The song's called My Place in History. And nobody but Dolly truly knows the contents of the box, but that's what's alleged. So they have the box there, and it's in this display case that's locked and stuff. And they actually have a piece of Dolly's first stage, which was her front porch. So like a broken piece of wood from her, East Tennessee cabin where she grew up. So that was really cool to see that.
Yeah, I remember her talking about that on one of the shows. I can't remember which one it was, Today Show or something, that she had something in a lockbox like that. All the times I've been in the Pigeon Forge area, you're driving down the road. I've gone by it 100 times. I've seen the ads, seen the billboards, shows up on my social feed all the time. We're talking about the Hatfield and McCoy dinner feud. Talk about that a little bit. And how did they make a show and a dinner with these two families feuding?
Well, I mean, they basically took two families in the 1800s that couldn't get their stuff together and made a dinner show out of it. Yeah, I had seen the ads for miles and all over Pigeon Forge and Gatlinburg for this, and it was one of those things where it's like, all right, I got to check this out. So there are three dinner shows that I think Herschend owns. Or Dolly, maybe the Dollywood company owns. I'm not really sure, but there's the Hatfields and McCoy's, there's Dixie Stampede, and then there's the Pirate
Dixie
Adventure.
Stampede, right?
So when it came down to it, it was there was a lot of availability issues because this was spring break. But the one that I really wanted to see was Hatfields and McCoy's. So we ended up buying tickets. Tickets were like $65, which has a little bit of sticker shock to it, but you do get dinner and a show out of it. They say the show is about 90 minutes long, which I think like legally on paper, that would be right. But your whole experience is more like 2 to 3 hours because they let you in early. They feed you your food first. They got a little bit of a pre-show, but, essentially speaking, what they do is, they have, the Hatfields and McCoys. This is 1800s West Virginia, Kentucky line. When you buy your ticket, you choose which side you sit on. Naturally, we sat on the McCoy side because I'm from Kentucky. And so the storyline is that there's a sheriff in town that's kind of corrupt, and he's attempting to get the Hatfields and McCoys to get into a shootout or a fight in his barn where he's having somebody else throw a party so he can essentially in a roundabout way collect money on it. I think the amount's $1,000, which was like, $100,000 in today's world. But the show ended up being much, much better than I ever imagined it would be. I knew it would be good because I looked it up. It's been around since
Hmm.
2010, so it's definitely not bad. But they had my favorite part was the cloggers. Like I didn't know much about clogging. I knew what it was. It's very similar to tap dancing. It's like for the classy people in New York, it's tap dancing. For the people in the South, it's clogging. But they had these people that were like cloggers, and it was the most cool thing ever to see them, and they were just absolutely incredible. The newest scene I think is the swimming hole scene. And I remember seeing ads for that of them diving into water. And we got there and there was like a stage and stuff. And I was like, well, what are they going to do? Roll this out? Or is that old footage? Or I know there's one in Myrtle Beach, so maybe it's just there. But they didn't. Actually, the stage sunk down and the water consumed it. So it created, I think I said, a 17-foot deep swimming hole. And it wasn't a dive show or anything. It was just more part of the storyline. But when the time was right, the stage went back up and then all the water dispersed, and then the next scene they were cleaning up after the flood, as they say, which was mopping all the water off of the residual stage. The show was really, really funny. I would go back. I think that the way it works is that they've got about a 10-month season, and they close because they have a normal show, and then they have their Christmas Chaos show in December.
Hmm.
And then I think they close for a few months, like when Dollywood's closed essentially, and then they reopen. And I think they tweak some things in between. I know that the core of the show has always been the same, but they add and remove things over time. But I will definitely go back and see it again. More importantly, though, I would say in the short term, I'm definitely going to check out Dixie Stampede and the Pirate Adventure because, if they're in the same vein as this, then man, that's so cool.
Yeah, well, I've seen Dixie Stampede down there, and it was very well done. Uh, Talk about this. How are you seated when you're inside the building?
So you're seated at tables, and the place it's not small, but it's not really huge. So I know that the back row I think was a slight discount, but it wasn't much of a price difference. So I think it was maybe 60 for the back row and 65 for rows 2 through 4 or whatever. And by rows I mean tiers, like it's actual tiers with 2 sets of tables. So don't think that it's 5 rows, so it's like 15 feet to the stage. I would say like from the back row to the stage is probably about 80 feet or so. The
Yeah.
very front.
Okay, it sounds very similar to what I experienced at the Dixie Stampede.
Right, yeah. So, from what I think that the front section that's like handicap accessible. It's also a splash zone for the water, the swimming hole scene. We were in the second or for the second or third row, I can't remember, but you're all seated at tables. So basically, they serve you your food beforehand, and then when the show starts, you just kind of like swing your chair over and watch it. But yeah, it's like a horseshoe shape. It's really cool.
Okay, now what kind of food did they serve?
So you wouldn't be shocked, but they have like fried chicken. That's the staple of the South. I've come to find out. Um, full disclosure, I'm not a big fried chicken fan, but I will say for what it was very good. They had a bunch of different side items, and they had bread waiting on the table for you when you arrived. Oh, and by the way, all the performers were your servers too. So I don't know what my performer
Oh,
did
okay.
or what my server did. I think she was like a crew member, but distinctly I remember like one of the girls I was serving in the row like across from us, so like right in my field of vision. I thought honestly, my first instinct was like, oh, yeah, some local 16, 17-year-old girl works here. Nope, professional clogger. She was on stage the entire time. So good on them. Like I said, I would go back. It's totally cool. I think my next one's going to be Dixie Stampede. I'll probably do that in a couple months when we go back in late May or early June, and then we'll do Pirate Adventure maybe around Christmas or so.
All right, Hatfield and McCoy Dinner Feud. I'm definitely going to have to check that out after hearing what you had to say about it. You went to Dollywood too.
I did.
So, what was the experience like when you stayed at DreamMore and then you wake up and you're going to the park?
Um, well, one thing that kind of comes to mind is I mentioned that we like walked around outside and enjoyed the resort. I mean, we were a little pressed for time because we went to Hatfields and McCoy's that night, but we still wanted to walk the grounds and stuff. And when we were out looking for the marshmallow or sorry, the s'mores thing, we distinctly smelled cinnamon bread, and it was coming from the direction of the park. So they do sell cinnamon bread in the park, but I don't think that's what it was. I think they were making it in the park for the next day, and it was the I could have just sat there all night, just the smell of that cinnamon bread wafting through the Smoky Mountains toward me. Um, there were some fantastic benefits to staying at the DreamMore. Proximity is a thing. It's not really a walking distance thing, so it's a little bit different from Breakers in that regard. But they do have a shuttle that's free, but here's the real benefit. I drove my car there, and I don't really like taking shuttles and stuff because I always typically find that kind of inconvenient. But when you stay at Dreammore, you get free preferred parking. Now, for those of you who've been to Dollywood, you know that their parking is it's very well orchestrated, but there's nothing dancing around the fact that it's horrendous. If you park, it takes forever to get to your car. They do have the really good tram system to get you to the park and stuff. It's not a reason not to go to the park or anything like that. But one thing that kind of happened was, spring hits a little bit earlier there than it does here. So we were on the fence about like, okay, it's like 55 degrees now, but it's going to be 70 or 72 this afternoon. Is it going to be too hot to wear a hoodie? So I was like, well, just leave them in the car. Because with preferred parking, you actually park within a decent walking distance of, the side gate that's, to the left of the main entrance
Hmm.
when you walk in. Um,
Okay.
so that was really cool to get that benefit. And also you get the time saver. Their skip the line pass. You get the limited version. So you get one ride through on Lightning Rod, one on Dragonfire, and then 5 other rides. And then you can do whatever you want. Unfortunately, with the amount of like big rides they have that would require something like that, that was actually plenty for what we were doing. We did not walk away wanting more when we did that, so that was totally cool. With that being said, probably Big Bear Mountain will be added to that list because that's going to be the new ride. So you'll probably get one ride through on that with Time Saver here in a few weeks when that opens.
All right. Dollywood celebrating the 50th anniversary of "I Will Always Love You." Describe what that celebration was like.
So I think it's really cool that they're actually doing a celebration for a song. Um, and on the outside looking in, it probably sounds like they were desperate for something, but they didn't need it because they have the Spring Festival, which is enormously successful. You know, so they did the I Will Always Love You Festival celebrating 50 years. And I guess that's the trend between Kings Island, Carowinds, Disney, everybody else celebrating 50 years of something. They have 50 years of
Yeah.
that song. But that song is iconic. It was impactful twice, once by Dolly Parton and once by Whitney Houston with The Bodyguard in like 92 or
Hmm.
93. Um, they had some really cool decor. So when you enter the park and you make a right, they always have things hanging on like almost like a grid above the midway. So during the spring celebration, they always have umbrellas. I think they had butterflies during the summer. They had Christmas things during Christmas, but they had these hanging pink dots that hung down. It was like a string that had maybe 15 of them hanging down, and they were like so dense, and it looked really neat. And it was super windy too, so they were going all over the place. It looked really neat. And then over in front of like kind of the celebration theater area where they have the topiary for Coat of Many Colors and during the spring celebration, they have this big sign that says love. It actually kind of reminded me of a Victoria's Secret commercial, but people were taking a lot of photos in front of that. So that was really neat too. So we got to go in there and take those photos, and they had special entertainment with songwriters and stuff. I didn't get to participate in any of the special entertainment for it. But from what I understand, the houses were packed for that. In the Pine is it the Pines Theater that's in the front.
But yeah.
Yeah, that one has like the songwriter series, which it has like actual legit career songwriters doing their songs, which is awesome.
You get to try anything new at Dollywood that you hadn't before?
Yeah, actually, I did see a new show, and I wrote it down because I can never. All the songs are so similar. Harmonies of the Heart. So I she uses hearth and heart a lot, and I had to look up what hearth is. I would highly encourage you to Google it because it's very cute. But Harmonies of the Heart is the show that features Dolly's family members. I've heard that there's more of them, but in the particular show that I saw, they had her cousin and her niece. And I thought it did a really good job of connecting Dolly to the park. Because they talk about, I mean, obviously they know her, and they tell her story and stuff, because Dolly Parton's story is the most storied story in the history of music, I would say. Aside from maybe your Elvis Presley's or something like that. But you talk about rags to riches. She believed in herself. She had her uncle who believed in her. She moved to Nashville as soon as she graduated high school. And they told that whole story, and they're as good of singers as her, and in the face they really, really look like her too. So I'm glad I got to see that. That's next to the Chasing Rainbows Museum, which is currently closed. It actually has a construction wall in front of it, because in 2024 they've already announced. Well, Dolly actually already announced that they're going to be completely reimagining the theater. The museum. It's still going to be a
Hmm.
museum, and it's still going to be about Dolly, but they're completely redoing it on the inside. So you've probably been through it too, but it's totally neat the way it is. So if they're going to modernize it and stuff, it can only get better from here.
Yeah, it's always a great experience. Now, those who are watching this on YouTube, they're all going to want to know this question: how is Big Bear Mountain looking?
So Big Bear Mountain looks so good. It looks so good, Don. First of all, it looks longer than I ever. I know it's the longest one in Dollywood history, but it
Mhm.
looks physically longer than I ever imagined it would be. Um, Additionally, I tweeted out a photo at attractions_GRP. By the way, um, you go under a waterfall there, and I know that was featured in the animation, but it looks so good in person. I
Yeah, that was
think.
a great photo, by the way.
Oh, I mean,
Yeah.
the photo took itself, really. And then it was funny because the comment I made on the tweet was my exact thought. It's like, a ride so pretty you'd want to take her to the prom, you know. So it's going to be a great looking ride. It's going to be a fun ride. It's like 70 or so feet tall, but it looks so much taller because it sits on the top of the mountain and stuff. I'm so stoked for it. They're saying a May 2023 opening date. I'm going to hope to be there for the opening weekend. So exciting. Wildwood Grove actually got some changes too, in addition to that. And I'm not entirely certain if this is a finished product or not, but they have like a stream that runs on the midway from Big Bear Mountain to Dragonflyer. It's almost like a creek, and it goes on the actual midway. So they didn't have the splash pad turned on, or it's gone. I'm not really sure, but kids were already splashing around in the water, which is 2 or 3 inches deep. So I don't know what to think, but it looks really cool in person. And of course, you can't see this, Don. You're gonna have to watch this video back, but I'm gonna overlay all the photos that I took of these areas.
Yeah.
While I was there. But I'm so excited for it. I can't wait to check it out in person at Big Bear Mountain once it opens.
All right, and to wrap it up, anything else notable that you did while you were in East Tennessee?
Yeah, so fortunately we are hitting the time of year where some stuff is open later. You like so a lot of stuff down there closes at 8 or 9 o'clock. So if you go to Dollywood and they close at 8, it's kind of tough to find something else to do for the evening besides like go to dinner or something, or if you're of age to go to a bar or whatever. But the mini golf is typically open later, and there was one we've been watching being built that's off the Parkway, and it's called the Toy Box Golf, I believe. And it's all like toy themed, and it's so neat. It costs like $17 or $18, somewhere in that range. But there's a Play-Doh themed hole. There's a uh, uh, Hot Wheels themed hole. There's Space Invaders, and the little characters light
Oh,
up. It's really neat. Now the 18th hole was, I think it was supposed to be Connect Four, and if you hit it in, it like generated something that gave you a prize, but it was down. So they said to just replay another hole. So that was like a pretty big disappointment. But the rest of the experience was really cool. And one thing that they had that we didn't really actually do because we're too competitive for this is they had like they had a list for each player, and it was like weird stuff like, okay, if player 2 hits a hole in one, they can add 2 strokes to somebody else's game, or whatever. We didn't do that, but it was an option. But it was definitely cool. Putt putt's always something that's neutral, and it's going to be a good time so long as you don't get too frustrated, which is always a risk with me. But yeah, I mean, it was a really good time, and I'll be back. I'm a Dollywood Gold Pass holder, so they can't stop me.
can't stop you. They can only hope to contain you there. Well, Ryan, really enjoyed your update there on your visit to Pigeon Forge and Gatlinburg, and we want to thank everybody for tuning in to this episode of the Attractions Group podcast, which is the exclusive of Ryan Sir talking about his trip down south.
Yeah, not every trip, just this one.
Just this
Just
one,
this one.
correct?
All right. And make sure that if you're visiting us for the first time, once again, welcome. Please subscribe, hit that like button, comment, if you will. And then we can be found on all their favorite podcast apps. We got full range podcasts. We just wanted to do this a little separately so it didn't overtake the show that we're recording tonight. But we can be found on all your favorite podcast apps. That's Apple, Google, Spotify, and so on. So once again, thank you. Please subscribe, and we'll see you on the next episode.